Hey, beautiful people. So lovely to be able to be back with you all. I hope this finds you well and with ease of heart. So we've had a real corker of a question drop into my email account. I absolutely love this question. Shane, are ghosts real? And what is the difference between them and spirits? Love that question. It reminds me of a beautiful quote that I heard. It was on a really, really magical, beautiful, fantastic TV series that I watched, and I absolutely adore it. Outlander, beautiful storytelling. You know, who's not going to love the idea or concept of touching a standing stone and then falling through time? I mean, I absolutely adore that as a concept, and beautiful, 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 beautiful storytelling, and about this kind of portal that was activated on All Hallows Eve, Samhain, and within the story, they talk about this standing stone circle up on this hill in called Craig Nadoon, and two main characters, which are Claire Fraser. Well, actually, there's three main characters: Claire Fraser and her husband. After the war, go on a second honeymoon. They go up to the Highlands of Scotland, just outside of Inverness, and they hear about this ritual that's going to be taking place on Samhain, All Hallowed Eve, winter nights, and they go and creep up this hillside, and they watch this ceremony that's being held by these coven of witches, and Claire returns the next day to identify. This is just after the war, and she's learning about plants, and she's working as a nurse, and she wants to study herbs and medicine, and she wants to identify this flower, and she has a suspicion that it's forget-me-not, and she touches this standing stone and then falls through time. Beautiful, beautiful storytelling. If you haven't come across it, something lovely to watch over the winter months, and absolutely adore it. But there's this quote within the series, where Claire says, "Ghosts only appear when there's a story to be remembered, or when there's a message worth relaying." And I just remember hearing that and kind of feeling goosebumps and feeling, that's absolutely right. Spirits, and there is a difference, and we're going to kind of explore that. Spirits only appear, she says, ghosts only appear when there's a story to be remembered, or when there's a message worth relaying. I've said over the time within the videos on my YouTube channel, many a time, how spirit make contact, and how they're trying to nudge us, to let us know that they are there, and the many things that they do. And there's a really beautiful video on my YouTube channel which talks about the five signs of spirit contact, and they work really hard to grab our attention, especially nowadays, as I've said in many of the videos over on my YouTube channel, that they are trying to kind of reach us, especially as we live really, really busy lives. So we're kind of quite distracted. So they kind of have to work a little bit harder at reaching us. And maybe what we need to do is kind of realize that we need to work a little harder at becoming more present. The world is in so much flux and so much change, and I think that spirit, they only appear to us, or kind of make that contact in the ways that they do, smells through association, um, dreams, appearing within their dreams, in a doorway, passageway, stairway, you know, they're only ever but doing that either to nudge us into development and growth, which is everything about what they do, or there's an intervention that they are wanting to grab our attention to relay a message of importance. You know, it's a beautiful quote. You know, Claire's quote is beautiful. Ghosts only appear when there's a story to be remembered or when there is a message worth relaying. You know, and I kind of, you know, when I got that question that dropped into my email account, you know, I'll go surreal, absolutely. You know, share 2 stories about that in a moment. Beautiful stories of personal direct experience. Are they real? Well, absolutely. Um, and what's the difference between ghosts and spirits? This is a really important point. You know, I think a lot of what we just shared is actually spirit contact. And you know, ghosts is something else. You know, it's kind of, sometimes it's like, you imagine, you know, when we used to use tapes. Those of us that are old enough will remember that. You know, tapes in tape players, and you kind of, you could record over the top of it, you could record over the top of it, you could record over the top of it. You know, you record all your favourite music off the radio back in the day, and then, you know, in months to come, it was no longer your favourite music, you would record over the top of it. And I think that that's some of how, you know, contacts with ghosts appear, especially within older buildings. It's like, it's a memory that's locked into the fabric of that space and into that time. So it's like a recording. You know, I remember my uncle sharing some really beautiful stories about an old pub, and at a certain time of the day, you could feel like a kind of bit of a tremor on the bar, and there would be this cold draft that would come through, and a couple of people had spotted this Roman soldier going through the bar. You know, it's almost like someone had come up through the cellar, and as they looked across the bar, they thought, "What's that?" And it was like, "No, surely not." And they'd seen this soldier, and you know what it was where the pub had been built, was not far from an old garrison. And it was always at a certain time of day. So was it that soldier, his echo had been absolutely kind of almost recorded into the fabric of that space and time? You know, because it's almost like with spirit, there's a sense of interaction. With ghost visitations, there isn't always the interaction. It's like it's something that is moving, or it's transitory, or it appears and then vanishes. You know, so, you know, there is this sense of, there is a difference. You know, here's a couple of stories that, you know, that kind of in a way drive home that. You know, or it's another way of looking at it is that, you know, through direct experience again, is, you know, certain places have an atmosphere, and then you kind of, you know, you kind of go underneath the layers, and you find out there was a traumatic event, and then you've got this apparition that appears within that place. It's almost like, you know, the trauma of that event is again infused and recorded into the fabric of that place. It's like etched into that place, you know, and you know, it sometimes comes with a foreboding atmosphere, you know, because there is trauma there. And you know, there's so many things that you can do, and maybe we get into that in future videos and podcasts. We can maybe explore that. It'll be good to explore it. But here's a couple of stories of encounters that I've had, and for me these are spirits. Spirits are, you know, there's intervention, there's messages, there's interaction, um, and that feels to be the difference between spirit and ghost. Although you can have, someone pass under, a huge amount of trauma, and there can be something that's unresolved, and they're trying to get your attention, because there's something that's unfinished or incomplete, or they are more aware of us than they are the other side of life, and you kind of get, what's known as maybe earthbound. It's very, very rare. Early on, when I was first developing 25, 26 years ago, it was something that I come into contact with quite strongly at the time. And I think, looking back, that's where spirit were teaching me. They were trying to show me the difference, and also kind of give me the skills to work with some of that information, and kind of work with, some of those events, and give me a real deep organic footing into be able to kind of work with that energy. And it is where sometimes that person has gone under trauma, or sudden, and they are kind of more aware of us than they are the other side of life. As I say, it's very rare, but when I was first developing, it did show up. And again, that was about spirit, my guides teaching me, giving me the tools to be able to proceed safely, and with a kind of deep-rooted, anchored understanding of discerning the difference as well. And I kind of remember coming into contact with that, walking into a lady's home, and just this feeling of feeling very unwelcomed, and this foreboding feeling, and this kind of heaviness, and it was like it was seeping into the house rather than coming from the house. And then there was this feeling as I looked behind me, turned around and looked at the houses around me. There was this feeling that was emanating from this corner house, as if someone was in there looking out, and this feeling of feeling really lost and lonely. And sadly, the lady confirmed that the corner house, a gentleman had hung himself. So, these things, these impressions, these feelings can be really, really powerful. And then there was a sense of, my feeling was, I remember sat there, closed my eyes, and thought to myself, okay, what can I do to help? And there was this feeling of the presence come outside of the house, and I could feel it, and then this story come about of why, and how it had led to that, and what had caused him to end up in that place, and then there was a sense of almost, counselling the spirit, and then there was a feeling of this lady appeared, and it was almost like I was a bridge between spirit and this gentleman, and he was in the in-between place. He was in the cracks. That's a very liminal space, and we kind of, in a way, move into the liminal, and that's the other thing, is this time of the year, it being Samhain, All Hallowed Eve, winter nights, and as I said, in previous videos and on my blogs and on Instagram, is that it's not just a day. This is a time and this is a season, and it's a gateway and a doorway. It's a portal that opens up, and the veils are thin. And I think that the other thing is, I know so often through the years and experiences that so many more people have spirit contact over the winter months. And it's like, oh no, that's a little bit eerie, that's a little bit spooky, it's darker, and you've got kind of an increase of contact. Lots of people say that they have encounters and visitations and spirit contact experiences over the winter months. And it's like, well, that's interesting. The veils are thinner, they're thinnest. But the other thing is, the mechanics of that, the science of that, if you like, is, if you will, is where we are a little bit more introspective. We may slow down a little bit more over the winter. We're going more inwards. We're in our homes a lot more. You kind of, looking at, it getting dark around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and all the way through till sort of 8 in the morning at the depth of that winter, and at the darkest part of the year. And that in a way kind of takes you very much in. It slows you down. You're a lot more introspective, and that contact is made a lot more easier. So it kind of makes sense. It does make sense, but that's kind of that liminal, and as spirits say, it is a gateway, it's a doorway. Samhain, Winternights, All Hallows Eve is not just a day, it is a time, it is a season, it is a doorway, a gateway into the liminal. It's enhanced. So I become a bridge. I could become a bridge between the two, between him and the spirit world. And there's this feeling of his mum, and then there was just this sense of them emanating a huge amount of light, and me kind of encouraging him just to let go. And it was just this kind of high pitched pop in my ears at the time, and this rushing sound, as if there was an absolute atmospheric change, as if something had just literally opened up, and this popping sensation as he popped into the spirit world between this space and the next, and I think that it overlaps. So here's a little story to end up on. A lot of you know about my encounter when I was 7 years old, right? You say, listening to Dad share that story to those that we were gathered round on a winter night round our table, as we had supper and kind of honoured the ancestors and each other, and we were all sharing stories of those people that have kind of come before us, and those people that have influenced us, and how that influence continues to live on. And it shared some really beautiful stories. Shared a story of me when I was 7 and seeing my gran. That was really lovely to hear it from his perspective again. And then one of the other stories I want to share with you now is that early on in my 20s, I'd been up to Scotland to come back, and I wanted to return, and things were really in big change within my life, within my world, and I just kind of knew that I was going up to really give myself some time to kind of look at where I was going to go next, what I was going to do. I was feeling this calling that the way that we were all living wasn't really true, in a sense. I was feeling there's so much more, but not knowing how to kind of nail that or connect to that, tether to that. And I went up into the mountains, and I was up there for some time, and after a while you get into a really kind of interesting space, at first it's quite overwhelming. You know, at first it's exciting, then it becomes overwhelming, and suddenly you wake up and you realise you haven't seen people for days upon days upon days. And anyway, he's kind of moving in and out the boffies, and those of you that are unsure what a bothy is known as a shelter, which is why I call my kitchen garden the bothy. It's got a lovely little wooden shelter there, and it's known as the bothy. You know, and quite often they were for farm workers, these bothies, and little crofts, and they were like little shelters and sanctuaries, and Mountain Rescue upkeep them as an actual bothy association. They upkeep them and make them good, and there's visitors books in them, and it's just beautiful stories of people you know, on journeys and journeys to south. Really lovely. And I'd come out of this bothy, and it was very early in the morning, and I was kind of making up a brew, and sitting there, and suddenly I look along the track, and this man, very tall, walking with real stride and purpose, and he greets me, and it was really lovely to see somebody, and he's asking where I'm going, and I kind of mentioned where I'm off to, and a little bit more of a conversation, and he kept asking me, but where is it that you're actually going? Where are you going? And I said to him, you know, I'm heading up here. I'm going towards, I think it was Fort William. I think that's where I'm heading towards. And he said, but how? Which way? And he said, show me on the map. And I went, well, actually, I'm just going across there, and I pointed towards across this like heathland heather, and that's the direction I'm heading in, you know, because I could see on my map that's the direction. And he said to me, okay. And you know, he was quite agitated when I kind of brushed him off and said, well, I'm just, you know, he was insistent on me. He was insistent on me kind of showing him, and in the end, I was like, well, I'm just going across there. And he went, right, okay, all right. So put your rucksack on and take 5 steps. And I thought, what's he on about? Anyway, I did. I took, like, I remember by the 3rd step, I was now waist deep. Okay, what this was peatland on this, all this heather, and this was peatland, and underneath it was springs, just huge, vast amounts of springs and water, and I was absolutely waist deep now. Remember, I ain't seen anybody in days. Okay, I ain't seen anybody in days. I'm now waist deep. It is freezing cold because this is right up in the mountains. This water, these springs are frozen, and I am sinking. Okay, he reaches across, he grabs hold of the straps on my rucksack and literally pulls me out. Okay, I am soaked, and I'd only been in there, I don't know, probably by the time he got me out, 1.5 minutes, enough for me to feel really overwhelmed, panicked almost. I'm in my early 20s, and he's literally ripped me out of this bogland, this peatland, pulled me out, and I went to apologise, explain myself, and he just said to me, don't say no more, just go and get into some dry kit. And I did, and I was shaken up, and I come back, went to speak again, and he just gestured to me to say, it's okay, not needed. And he made me a hot coffee, hot tea, and he gave me a marathon bar, which is now Snickers. Yeah, and I sat there, munched into it, felt myself come back to a place of calm and rest, and with that I kind of put my trousers, my socks, um, into a black bag and chucked them into my rucksack. Another thick, warm pair of socks, put a hat on my head, and we then started to walk along this trackway. And we were walking some time. He was telling me about his life, and the fact he was a school teacher, and that he'd come up into the mountains every summer's holiday and would spend sort of 4 to 5 weeks, no more than four, sorry, no less than four, up into the mountains, and walk across the mountains, and that's what he done. And very knowledgeable, and a really kind of wonderful guy. And after a bit of time, you know, he was 6 foot. You know, he was a tall guy. The stride, his stride was a lot kind of bigger than mine, and he was, I would say, a lot stronger as well. Actually, you know, he'd done a huge amount of mountaineering and walking, and after a while, there was a little bit of a gap getting between us, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and it was if naturally, you know, I was just falling into my rhythm, he was into his rhythm, and after some time, he gets to a top of a ridgeway, and he calls out to me, calls out to me, and shouts, "Shane, stick to the path, keep to the path." Of course, there was no argument with that. And he then goes over the top of this ridgeway. He waves, goes over the top of this ridgeway, and kind of, you know, disappears over the other side of it. And it took me around about 15 minutes or so to reach that point. So probably there was, by now, there was like, you know, round about a mile, just under, distance. It may have not been because I was climbing, but it was, you know, going up a mountain track, which was quite fairly straight, and it was a really good track. But it was some time, you know, and I get to the top of this ridgeway, and I look over the top, and there's just the river is opening up, and it's just stunning, breathtakingly beautiful. And then you've got these sides of the mountains opening up, and there's just pine trees on the sides, and then the mountains, and you've got this riverway, and you've got this trackway, and you can see for miles and miles. And I can make out right down in the distance a really tiny little blot on the landscape, this little tiny little point dot almost, that was a croft. And I was like, hold on a minute, where's he gone? Where is he gone? Where has he disappeared to? And I thought, that's strange. And I get my binos out and binoculars, and I'm looking and looking and looking. I cannot see him. He's just absolutely vanished. And I was really miffed by that, and kind of quite confused, actually, really hugely confused, and kind of a little bit shaken up. And I proceeded down, and it took me the best part of sort of like 9 hours to get to the bottom where this croft was. And in my head, I was going to camp nearby. There, you know, it's still by the river, so water source. And I thought to myself, that would be where Day's End is if I get down. You know, there's no rush, and that's how the rhythm of what I was doing was. And I did reach that croft, and as I'm walking across like the little yard there, dogs go nuts, crazy, you know, letting the owners know that there's a friend walking by. And this guy comes out, and he's like, "Oh, lovely to see you," and kind of you know, asking me about my journey. And I say to him, you know, has anyone else been through here today? And he's like, there's no one been through here in days and days. And I must have looked really shocked Well, there was something in my glance and my look, and he looks at me, smiles, takes his woolly hat off his head, holds it to his heart chest, and he went, "So you've seen him too?" And I remember just going completely cold, thinking, what had I seen? What have I just experienced? And he could tell I was shaken. He said, "It's okay." He said, "You know, in these parts, there's been a story of people being lost, losing their way up in that range of mountains. And this man appears. And he's helped many a stranger find their way and along their way." He said, "But the odd thing is," he said, "a few years back," he said, "there was a school teacher." Remember, my dear friend that I just met was a school teacher. There was a school teacher that had fallen off a dam wall, and he fell into a river, and he had a backpack on, and he drowned. And what it was apparently was that there was a ram going across this dam wall, and he was in between. This person was in between the ram and its kids, and got spooked. He misplaced his footing and fell off this damn wall. And I remember sitting there, and by now I'd sat down. I remember sitting there and thinking, "Oh my God." But the crazy thing about that was, he made me a cup of tea. I took a marathon bar off him. You know, I just, you know, after all these years, I still cannot fathom that experience. You know, I've experienced enough to know that there's so much that goes on beyond what we see and understand. But I remember coming back, and at the time, coming back home, and at the time, I'd kind of been in and out of development circle. It was only a short amount of time I was there, but and my brother at the time, my younger brother at the time, and also, you know, he naturally absolutely has the ability and aptitude, and it runs very deeply in him. However, he doesn't use it in the same way that I do, in the same way that my dad does. On my uncle, so it's very much in the family, and you know, my nan and granddad had the ability. It was my gran on my mum's side that appeared to me, you know, so it courses through our veins, you know, and understanding my heritage and ancestry, the Nordic and the Irish, you know, that strand of thread of spirituality is absolutely hugely switched on. But my brother, he had been in a couple of sessions in the development group. I think it was at the time maybe a little bit overwhelming for him. But anyway, he turned to me one day and said, "Who's Frank?" Now, Frank was the name of the man I met in the mountains of Scotland. He was the school teacher. So are ghosts real? And what is the difference between ghosts and spirits? Hope that has stirred up some thought for you. It certainly has taken me back into that place as well. Who's Frank? I will never ever forget that. I will never ever forget that. And he gestured to a spirit standing in the door at the time. I think the conversation was along the lines of, "He's glad to see you home safe and sound." And I'd never shared him that story until that night after he told me, and I was like, my goodness. And I think, you know, I was still trying to make sense of it, and I think there's a part of me that still is, not in a bad way, but in a way that is, that's just a miracle. These are incredible interventions, but then every day when I'm consulting, I'm seeing those interventions take place in such the profoundest way, where people's ancestors and loved ones step in and absolutely illuminate a situation with so much clarity, unarguable, unshakable validation, that it's just profound. How blessed are we that that world interacts with our own, and how blessed are we that they are standing beside us and guiding us along the road of life. There we are, fantastic, beautiful. I've absolutely enjoyed doing this video and podcast. Those of you that follow my channel, you also, if you head over to my website, allthews.shanegadd.com, you will be able to follow my podcast. Just another way of reaching you in a way that means you don't have to just sit in front of a video. It's another way of kind of doing things, and yeah, each Sunday morning you will find an episode will drop into the website. Our last one is roundabout we are all alchemists and magicians. Very similar to the video of last week, but a little bit more. So yeah, allthews.shanegadd.com. Until next time, keep shining, shine bright.